You are well aware that the Eustachian tube connects the middle ear with the nasopharynx. So the anatomy of Eustachian tube or the pharyngotympanic tube was well explained in a previous class. The test of Eustachian tube function is also very important. You may get a full essay on that, or each test can be separately asked as short notes, and in clinical practice also that is very important. Today's topic is test of Eustachian tube function. Tests of Eustachian tube function. Okay. What are the functions of the Eustachian tube? Mainly there are three physiological functions. One, by opening, the Eustachian tube maintains middle ear pressure. It keeps the middle ear pressure equal to that of the atmospheric pressure. That is number one. Number two, by closing the nasopharyngeal end, it prevents or protects the middle ear from nasopharyngeal secretions and also from loud sounds. So that is number two is protection, and the third, the middle ear secretions are drained through the Eustachian tube into the nasopharynx. So the three physiological functions are: one, protection of the middle ear; second, regulating the middle ear pressure; and third is clearance of middle ear secretions. A normally functioning and patent Eustachian tube is a necessity for ideal middle ear sound mechanics. And do you think that the Eustachian tube function and patency are the same? What is the difference? Is there any difference? By Eustachian tube function, we mean the three Eustachian tube functions I mentioned already. And the patency is whether the Eustachian tube is open or obstructed. Okay, that is patency. Patent Eustachian tube means that there is no obstruction, it is open. Both are not the same. So what are the tests of Eustachian tube function? So the number one is pneumatic otoscopy. What is that? Pneumatic otoscopy means permeatal examination of the tympanic membrane using an otoscope, along with testing the mobility of the tympanic membrane using a Siegel's speculum or a Siegel's bulb. Okay. Or a pneumatic bulb. A normal looking tympanic membrane is pearly white, semi-transparent with a cone of light in the anteroinferior quadrant, and also it is mobile. The hallmark of a Eustachian tube dysfunction is a retracted tympanic membrane. By using a pneumatic otoscope, you are seeing a normally appearing tympanic membrane with a normal mobility. That means that the Eustachian tube function is normal. About the anatomy of tympanic membrane, I have already described in a previous class. I am not repeating. You have to know the normal appearance of tympanic membrane along with the features of retraction. It was already described in a class on anatomy of tympanic membrane. Okay. So the second test is endoscopies. What are the endoscopies you can use? There are nasopharyngoscope. You can use a nasopharyngoscope. Either it can be a rigid scope or a flexible nasopharyngoscope, so that the nasopharyngeal opening of the Eustachian tube can be clearly seen. And endoscopes are available. And also there are Eustachian tube endoscopes. Okay. Actually, the Eustachian tube endoscopes are very small flexible endoscopes which can be passed through the Eustachian tube to see the patency and also the functional capacity. And the third one is impedance audiometry or tympanometry. Okay. The impedance audiometry, along with the details on different types of tympanometric curves, I explained in my class on impedance audiometry. Okay, I am not repeating. And the fourth test of Eustachian tube function, imaging studies. You can use which all thing? MRI can be used. MRI, you can get the anatomy as well as the physiology of Eustachian tube. Along with the CT scans are there, and also if you use a fluoroscopy with contrast, you can get a dynamic assessment of the mucociliary clearance of the Eustachian tube. Okay. So fluoroscopy with contrast enhanced. Okay. Next, there are some maneuvers which can be used as clinical test, and some maneuvers will increase the pressure in the nasopharynx, and some other maneuvers will reduce the pressure in the nasopharynx. That is maneuvers producing a positive pressure in the nasopharynx and maneuver which causes a negative pressure in the nasopharynx. Of these, the maneuvers which produces a positive pressure in the nasopharynx are Valsalva, Frenzel, Politzer test and Eustachian tube catheterization. Of these, the Valsalva and Politzer test and also the Eustachian tube catheterization is outdated now. But in examination, sometimes this will be asked as short notes. So, what is this Valsalva maneuver? The basic principle of all the four is the same. We are producing a positive pressure in the nasopharynx, so that if the Eustachian tube is functional or patent, the positive pressure will come to the middle ear, and if an intact tympanic membrane, it will cause bulge. And if there is a perforated tympanic membrane, the air will escape through the tympanic membrane perforation, causing a hissing sound which can be heard well with a stethoscope. Okay. So, what is this Valsalva maneuver? That is, you ask the patient to close the mouth as well as the nostril and ask to blow the cheek like this. Okay. So that what will happen? So that the nasopharyngeal pressure will increase, and on examining the tympanic membrane, you can see the bulging out of the tympanic membrane. And if there is a perforation, you will hear a hissing sound, especially it will well heard if you keep a stethoscope over this area. Valsalva maneuver. What are the advantages of this Valsalva? It is very easy to perform, easy to learn also, but the disadvantage is that the hands are occupied only by doing like this, and also it depends upon the intrathoracic pressure. Okay, if there are conditions in which the intrathoracic pressure cannot be increased, in that cases this Valsalva cannot be done. In a Frenzel maneuver, we are asking the patient to contract the muscles of floor of mouth as well as that of the pharynx while keeping the nose, mouth and the glottis closed. Okay, you perform by yourself, then only you will know. Voluntarily close the nose, mouth and the glottis and contract muscles of floor of mouth and pharynx. Again, we are increasing maintaining or producing a positive nasopharyngeal pressure, and on examination of tympanic membrane will cause bulging of the tympanic membrane, or if there is a perforation, it will cause hissing sound. Okay, that is difficult to learn, but if learned, it is better than a Valsalva because the hands are free and it will not depend upon the phase of respiration. Okay, so that is the advantage. Then what is this Politzer test? Politzer test is, this is like a Politzer bag is like this. There will be a nostril, and along with that there is a bag attached to that. There will be an opening here also. And if I am checking the right Eustachian tube function, you ask the patient to close the left nostril and keep the nostril end of this into the right nostril, and ask the patient to either to swallow or ask him to produce the sound K, 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 or at the same time ask to swallow. Both these can be done, either to swallow or ask him to make a sound of K. At the same time, you compress the end of the Politzer bag. So that again what happened? This positive pressure will go to the nasopharynx, and while swallowing or doing the K, this Eustachian tube nasopharyngeal end will open. So the air from the Pulitzer bag will go through the Eustachian tube opening into the middle ear. Again you can see the bulging of the tympanic membrane. The same procedure. We are making a positive nasopharyngeal. The next one is Eustachian tube catheterization. To be very frank, I have not seen or done a Eustachian tube catheterization so far. It is not at all done nowadays, but you should know the method. And this is a Eustachian tube catheter. See, Eustachian tube catheter. We call it a Rose's Eustachian tube catheter. Okay. And another variety is there similar to this, which is also called Hartmann. Okay. So it has got a ring at one end also and another curved tip. And actually in our clinics we use this for removal of foreign body from the nose. For Eustachian tube catheterization, first elevate the tip of the nose with your fingers and spray nose with a 10% silocaine spray or with 4% silocaine. And after elevating this, the catheter, the tip of the catheter should be directed above and introduce it through the floor. As you push a Ryle's tube or a nasogastric tube, push it backwards through the floor till it touches the posterior pharyngeal wall of the nasopharynx. Okay, till actually it is 7 cm. It should go completely into the nose, so that this will touch the posterior wall of the nasopharynx. Once it touches there, gently turn it 90 degrees medially. This will act as a navigator. So turn it 90 degrees medially and just pull it anteriorly. So that what will happen? This will go and hook around this end. So here it is like this. If you turn it 90 degrees, this will go and hook at the posterior end of the nasal septum. So introduce it. Once it reaches the touches the posterior wall of nasopharynx, just turn it 90 degree medially so that it will go behind the posterior end of septum, and it pull it anteriorly also, a little bit anteriorly towards you. And after that, now it is like this. See, it is like this. And after that, turn it 180 degrees laterally. Okay. So 90 degree medially, and after that 180 degree laterally. What will happen? See, the tip is now directly at the Eustachian tubal opening. This is a Eustachian tube opening, this area. So first you introduce it through the floor till it reaches the posterior wall of nasopharynx. Then turn it 90 degree medially and pull it towards you. Once it touches or reaches behind the posterior end of nasal septum, turn it 180 degree laterally so that the end tip enters into the nasopharyngeal opening of the Eustachian tube. After that, by keeping it there without changing the position, once it reaches the Eustachian tubal opening, without changing the position, to this end attach the end of a Pulitzer bag. This is a Pulitzer bag we used in Pulitzer test. It can be directly, this nostril can be attached directly to the this end, or this can be connected to the Pulitzer tube using a tubing also. Push air into the from the Pulitzer bag, squeeze the Pulitzer bag so that the air will come to the Eustachian catheter. From there, through the nose, it will go to the Eustachian tubal opening, and through the Eustachian tube, it will reach the middle ear also. Okay, and through a tubing, an auscultation tube with 2 ear tips. One ear tip into the examiner's ear and one ear tip into the patient's ear, so that each squeezing of the air in the Pulitzer bag, the sound can be heard both by the examiner or as well as by the patient. A normal blowing sound is heard if the air from the Pulitzer bag transferred to the Eustachian tube and reached the middle ear normally. That means that the Eustachian tube is patent and functioning normally. That's a normal blowing sound. If there is fluid in the middle ear, a bubbling sound will be heard. And a whistling sound. When you hear a whistling sound, if there is a nasal block, you will hear a whistling sound from your nose. Like that, if on auscultation, on polymerization, if you hear a whistling sound, that means that there is obstruction to the Eustachian tube. And if there is no sound is heard on performing this Eustachian tube catheterization, that means two inferences. One, there is Eustachian tube block, or two, the procedure is not correct. If it has not reached correctly into the Eustachian tubal area, or the Eustachian tube is not functioning properly. So that is Eustachian tube catheterization. Complications are: one, there is injury to the Eustachian tubal area, forming scarring of the Eustachian tubal area, causing permanent middle ear problems. Second, forceful blowing or too much air will cause a perforation of tympanic membrane. Then there can be chance of bleeding from the nose and also vasovagal attacks. And the complication or difficulties you can encounter, more than complication, the difficulties you can enter is if this area is filled with adenoid hypertrophy, or any tumor in the nasopharynx or nasopharyngeal carcinoma. All these can cause this difficulty in doing this Eustachian tube catheterization. But advantage is that you can, if there is minor obstructions, if there is any minor mechanical obstructions in this, if you blow air through this obstruction can be relieved. That is one advantage of this. And also you can instill medications. I already told you all this procedure is completely obsolete now. But even then, you can instill medications into that. Now there are modifications to this blind procedure. This can be introduced using a nasopharyngoscope, so that the exact position of the Eustachian tube opening is seen by a flexible nasopharyngoscopy, and then this can be introduced into that. That will cause less of complications. Okay. The next one is this thing, that is a maneuver which produces a negative nasopharyngeal pressure, and that is a Toynbee test. And this Toynbee test is considered to be more reliable than a Valsalva. In here, the patient is asked to swallow while keeping the nostril pinched. Swallowing. So that what will happen? The air from the middle ear is sucked in through the Eustachian tube into the nasopharynx, so that using an otoscope, you can see the inward movement of the tympanic membrane. If the tympanic membrane is intact, you can see the inward movement. And if the tympanic membrane is perforated, the manometer of the impedance bridge can be used to detect the pressure changes. Okay, so that is Toynbee, which is more reliable than a Valsalva, and in which a negative nasopharyngeal pressure is produced. This test of mucociliary clearance are done in case of a perforated tympanic membrane. We instill all the three, or any solution can be instilled into the tympanic membrane through the perforation. The time taken for the solutions to reach the pharynx and imparts its taste is taken as a measure of Eustachian tube function and also the mucociliary clearance mechanism. So if you instill a drop of saccharin into the tympanic membrane perforation, it will reach the middle ear, and from there it will reach the nasopharynx, and the sweet taste will be perceived by the patient. And again, methylene blue, the color of dye, that is blue color, can be seen on the pharyngeal secretions. And if you instill the antibiotic ear drops, and again the bad taste of this antibiotic ear drops has got a bad taste, that will be sensed by the patient if the mucociliary mechanism is working normally. And the next test is sonotubometry. Sonotubometry. So this sonotubometry is a non-invasive technique which give information on active tubal opening. A tone is delivered into the nose and it is picked from the external auditory canal. So if the sound is heard more clearly, that means the eustachian tube is patent. And also the time intervals of opening of the eustachian tube can also be picked up by using a sonotubometry. And this diagnostic tool is independent of whether tympanic membrane is intact or perforated. And under physiological conditions, the tubal opening timing can also be picked up. Okay. So to conclude, these are the tests of Eustachian tube function. And I forgot to tell you one thing, that a pressure of 33 millimeters of mercury is needed in order to open the Eustachian tube in case of Valsalva, and 8 millimeters of mercury is needed in case of Frenzel. That again shows that Frenzel test is it's a better technique than Valsalva. This pressure can be asked in MCQs also. So study all this, and if any doubt, ask in the comment box. Thank you.